I'm Kevin Ranke, and I'd like to welcome you to Beyond the Echo. I ran for governor in Michigan. After losing that election, my desire to look at issues that are important to the state or the country grew. There is so much static. There are so many opinions. Our news stations have gotten to the point where we don't know what news is anymore. Where do you go to get real facts? This is about real perspective for you. Beyond the Echo will cut through all the smoke, all the opinions. It's not about Republicans. It's not about Democrats. It's about the issues and what are real. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Echo. I'm really excited today to have Pam Good, and her company, Beyond Basics, is something that I have followed for many, many years. And when I ran for governor, actually, one of the first things that I did was called up Pam because education in our state is a issue. We have one of the fastest falling public education systems in America. And what's tied to that is reading literacy. And Beyond Basics is an amazing company that gets amazing results as it relates to literacy. So with that said, welcome, Pam. Thank you so much for being here this morning. How you doing?
I'm great. It's great to be here with you also. Thank you, Kevin.
You bet. You bet. We were talking before the tape started to roll, and we were talking about the value of literacy and how it transcends through our state, through our communities, through our neighborhoods, through our society. And share a little bit about yourself, your background, and then let's get into the meat and bones of literacy and the value of it for the people in Michigan and America.
Yeah, I think I would like to start out by saying, there's a solution to it. And many people don't want to deal with it because they're overwhelmed by the magnitude. But I would like to say right out the gate here that if we really addressed this as adults and as a nation, we could look back on this problem in 5 to 7 years. It is so obtainable.
It's hard for me to understand how the people that lead our educational departments and our government agencies fail to address the issue that we have children in the various grades that are nowhere near able to read to that grade level's literacy standards. How does that happen in America?
I mean, if you look at the issues of literacy and how we ended up here, you will see a number of reasons of why society is missing this, right? How can they be missing this when you have 90% of your kids in Detroit who can't read? You have 50% in rural communities that can't read, but you have 30% in Oakland County, the highest achieving school there. 30% can't read. And there's not a soundbite for it, but go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, I want to start with the rich neighborhoods, the privileged neighborhoods, because all too often there's a thought process in those areas that, of course, everyone can read. We're from this place, and that's for another group of people. It's for an ethnic group of people. It's for minorities. It's for poor people. It doesn't exist in these successful neighborhoods. And that is a false narrative. 30% of the people in Oakland County schools can't read to grade level efficiency, you're saying.
In a particular district.
Yeah. I can only
in
imagine.
the highest achieving district. And honestly, it's Rochester.
Yeah.
Rochester Community Schools. There's
Rochester Community.
30%, that currently can't read. But there's 63,000 children in Oakland County that can't read. So it is an epidemic. I can give you a stat that, this is a nationwide epidemic. There isn't one state in our nation that can claim better than 40% proficiency for 8th graders. Think about that.
One state in America.
Not one state. There were a couple states prior to COVID, and then COVID kind of inched us in the other direction. But
I'm not aware of a state that isn't asking for more money for football fields or for new buildings or for computer systems And really, what you're implying is all of that money ultimately isn't worth a damn if kids can't read.
That's right. That's right. When you look at the educational budget and you realize that we're graduating kids who are reading at less than a fifth grade level, that's it's wrong in every way you look at it. I think that how we got here is over generations, right? And I would tell you that the fact that the universities stopped teaching teachers how to teach kids to read in the early 80s, they adopted a whole language approach. Whole language approach can help you if you're already a reader. It gives you strategies on how to just guess what the words are. But you don't learn how to read in that method. And they started using that method in the early 80s to teach kids how to read, and it didn't work. And so that started, and I remember, I think it was the late 90s when Detroit schools, we were there at that time doing our academic enrichment programs, they started rolling it out there. You need phonics, you need decoding, you need to know the sounds of letters and how to break down words. So that's one piece of what happened. I know that it was in the 80s when they did that A Nation at Risk study, where the government basically said if we don't solve some of these issues, and literacy was one, that basically it predicted where we are today because nobody really addressed it with zeal. But at that time, what they started to do was to test kids, but they tested them and they normed. They percentiled everyone. And in literacy, you can't do that. And I think it's the greatest reason that in the school system and the Department of Education that it basically homogenizes the score so that you don't realize that 11th graders reading at a second grade level, you think that they're, much higher than that.
See, I hate to say it. I think that is the intent. I think that somehow in America, we have turned from rewarding people to perform at certain levels to trying to disincentivize those people or to not identify those people. And it's not to give the high achievers a medal. What it is it should be is to help those that are falling behind. If we don't create a foundation for our nation, for our state, for our children to be successful in, we fail. And the dependency soars on government. And I don't know. I don't want my kids to be sheep. I don't want your kids to be sheep.
Right.
I don't want anybody's kids to be sheep.
They don't want to be sheep either.
They don't want to be sheep
They
either.
do not want to be sheep.
The pride of reading. And I can remember there was a system when I was in, I want to say 7th grade, that we had to go through. And it was an advanced reading deal, and it was speed reading, and it was comprehension. And the pride that we felt in as students, we challenged each other, and we helped those that were falling behind. And reading, writing, arithmetic seemed to me to be foundational for everything that exists in this country. How do we start to address it, Pam? What do we do if it's taken since the 80s? So I'm going to just generically say 44 years of bad educational management, bad decisions, because we have to look at results. And if kids can't read, it's not the parents' fault. It's the school system's fault, in my view. It might be the administration, it might be the teacher, but somebody has to be held accountable instead of the kids simply suffering. When your whole goal is to make the kid the star, or should be to make the kid the star.
Right.
So help us there.
Yes. I call this a silent epidemic. And one reason that it's silent is that it's creeped up on us over time. So this started in the 80s. So, you have technology coming in. And I think the first broken piece in our nation is around the social service system, right? It is the point in time when they started, really just rolling out help to people that didn't have relationship with it anymore. You know, the people who used to take care of the poor and the orphaned and all of that were the faith-based communities. And when the government started paying poor people, they just give cash, right? They just give cash. The faith-based communities gave relationship and resources, and they helped you get on your feet again. When the government hands out cash, it also hands out shame with it. And so when you are not taught to read, you lose dignity and you end up isolating on your own. When you get additional dollars because you're disabled, you end up, that becomes a crutch for you and you end up thinking you can't work. And so government has handed out money and not enough of it for people to be able to have the basic things that we used to all have. And so the roots of this starts in a broken social service system that then can apply labels to people.
Or is it the concept?
I think the leaders of the social service system changed. And with that leadership change, they started very much rewarding the goodwill and the ill-willed at the same levels. And it really oppressed the good-willed people in a community. I see it even today. Those people that are struggling so much in a school, they take away the attention that some of those that could actually move forward and make a life for themselves, they can't. I mean, you know, I've done our work in the inner city for a very long time. And so just the words of the families living there, you know, good-willed people can't let their children outside because they will be gobbled up by the streets, right? And the media focuses on the ill-willed activity. And people outside of those communities end up not recognizing the beauty of the people there. There's such a beautiful spirit of people surviving in our inner cities. It just breaks my heart to see how much they struggle, and they are good-willed. And so our government taking over, taking care of the poor and doing it just through cash and no heart has crushed and is crushing today many capable people. And so that is the root of it.
Is there enough money in the system to get a result already that's better than what we're receiving?
Yes. I mean, definitely there is. I mean, first of all, you could probably take the budget that assesses the students, right? They're homogenizing them. It's a percentile based. It's not laser focused on a child, like how far they're behind. You could take that assessment budget and use it for a few years to actually apply something and then go back and measure. We're wasting so much money, and most of the money that they're spending is crushing people. And I will tell you, the Department of Education has built a phenomenal educational model, but they have kept the kids from being able to access it because they can't read, and they get passed along in this beautiful model and they can't read. We have to address it.
See, I think that's part of what's wrong with government. Some people in government think
accountability.
There's zero accountability.
There's no accountability in government.
And some people in government think, oh my God, we're here to make laws. We're here to make regulations, and they are utopic. And they are actually flabbergasted when their utopic idea isn't adhered to. And we see that, I believe, in education. I think we see it in gun laws. I think we see it in traffic laws. And government very, very slyly uses the failures that they create to consume more money with the hope of a solution. They go after people. We need more tax dollars because we've never gotten you the result we promised. But if we take more of your money, if we get more control over you, at some point we'll get lucky and we'll get a result. And God, that angers me because that is not the American way. That's not Michigan's way. There's so much pride. Forget about the color of a kid. And I mean this. I don't think reading has anything to do with race. I call BS on the people that say, oh, it's a socioeconomic deal. I think every kid can read if they're given the opportunity and the tools to help them get along. Am I wrong with that thought?
Our work proves that every child is able to learn to read. They
You,
are capable.
you mean you don't have to be white to be able to read?
No, not at all.
You
And
don't have to be a U.S.
yes.
citizen to be able to read or from the suburbs?
No, you don't.
Little
You
black
don't.
kids can
Yes.
learn how to read.
A
Can
quote
we
that
hold them to
keeps
the same standard?
Absolutely.
I think so as well.
Absolutely.
That's good to hear.
We've convinced communities that they're not able, and it's simply not true. Our work getting high school kids reading in an average of 10 to 12 weeks demonstrates that they are able to learn to read even later in life. And so it isn't the kids. I think that what we have prevalent in our government and our society today this quote comes to mind. It's like the path to destruction is paved with many good intentions. And when
Yeah.
someone comes up with an idea, our society by and large is not able to discern if it's a destructive path or not. And we've been running down the path of destruction for a very long time, and we have to turn that around. And I think the first way that we turn that around is by trying to look at these situations with our heart and with not blaming, because the moment you blame, you are not solving. And so we need to get to know each other. We need to cross these divides, whether it be a label around race or a label around not being able to learn to read, or a label around dyslexia or autism, or some of these things that the Department of Education uses as a label to justify why you can't read.
See, I struggle, Pam, with that because government has a responsibility for accountability.
Yes, I agree.
And we're not holding government accountable.
No, we're
And
not.
government says, well, because you're blaming us. And just out of curiosity, when there are no standards, Michigan has eliminated ranking schools based on performance. Michigan has eliminated reading literacy levels through all of their grades. They've eliminated the third grade testing scores, which would set a path forward. So, in society, I think that people blame each other. They point fingers and that's emotion. But in government, and I harp on this all the time, it's why I believe that we can't just simply elect pretty faces or well-intended people. Government should lay out a plan, should lay out a structure, and there should be an expectation for performance and measures, not just smoke and mirrors with people's hands out all the time. And it starts with education. I'm worried about our country. I read, and I forgot what the statistic was, that the United States in the world, and it was pertaining to an element of education, ranked 123rd in the world. Did you remember that statistic at all? Or
What it reminds me of, we have many people support our work, and there was a gentleman from Freudenberg, German company. They do work all over the place, and he came into one of the inner city schools with me, and his eyes were open to the fact that America did not get its own children reading in its own language. And he looked at me and he said, Pam, in Germany, we not only teach kids our language to read and write, we teach them yours. There are ways that our government can be doing better. And we have a very unique governmental system, right? It doesn't entrench accountability. We are our government. And so as we decline, our government declines. And we can see areas like literacy that is causing our nation to decline. And those of us who want every person to have the ability to, everyone in the inner city, they want to take care of themselves and take care of their families. Our social service system and the broken literacy that we have in our nation keeps people from being able to do that. We need to empower them to do that. And I still think that it takes heart, because the problem is so large that you get into it and it's easier to blame because it lets us walk away. If you can blame and stay there and solve, I'm with you. But I see people saying, oh, isn't that because of that? And then it gives them a reason to do
Not to
nothing.
participate.
We
Yes.
have to all participate. And I believe that illiteracy is connected to almost every social ill. It is a phenomenal place for all of us to get involved, get our kids reading, and watch incarceration reduce. Watch the education of every race and every child with a learning difference like autism or dyslexia. They are capable of learning. We need to embrace literacy and empower individuals to live out their God-given right.
See, I happen to think that literacy
Mhm.
in education is the price of admission.
Yes, I agree with you.
And,
It
and,
should
I-
be.
and it
But,
absolutely,
yes.
unquestionably
Mhm.
should be the sole focus. I'm willing to give up art. I'm willing to give up music. I'm willing to give
I
up
want to keep art.
athletics. I get it. But
But we can if the system's working. You
well,
don't have to
you
give
know
up
what?
anything.
I'm only suggesting that when I say give it up,
Mhm.
I mean prioritize.
Mhm.
And I think kids have to achieve certain levels
Mhm.
before they can have other elements brought in.
Mhm.
And, for some folks, maybe that's forcing a kid to focus on reading.
Mhm.
And I think that's what adults are supposed to do, or leaders are supposed to do
Mhm.
to influence to get a result.
Mhm.
I'm talking about forcing kids to be able to write.
Mhm. Yes.
I'm talking about
Mhm.
forcing kids
Mhm.
through focus to be able to do math and rewarding them
Mhm.
with electives
Mhm.
like music, like art, like sports.
Mhm.
And yet kids got to burn steam. I
Mhm.
get it. But teachers have to be held accountable for the results that their students get, in my view.
Yes.
And it's really hard not to get angry. Okay?
Yes.
Really, really hard for me.
Mhm.
You're in it every day. I look at it and like you said, there's waste, there's lack of accountability.
Mhm.
In my simple mind,
Mhm.
and I am willing to admit it's
Mhm.
very, very simple. It's leadership. It's
Mhm.
people focused on a result versus focused on a job.
Mhm.
And we have too damn many politicians
Mhm.
that are doing it for the money, the
Mhm.
position, the power.
Mhm.
And then they give excuses to the people that they're supposed to represent. They divide us versus bring us together. And
Mhm.
I would love to see, tell me, what would a program
Mhm.
look like
Mhm.
to make Michigan the number one state in America
Mhm.
for literacy? Tell me at what grade levels and how long
Mhm.
it would take to implement, to have Michigan truly lead America in reading literacy, from your view.
3 to 5 years.
3 to 5
Mhm.
years.
Yes.
We are only 3 to 5 years away from changing the lives
Mhm.
of hundreds of thousands of children.
Yes, if we address it, right? I mean, right now in probably close to 50 locations, we're in schools and we're transforming those lives. But, it's a few thousand a year. We have to make that, we've got to be embracing it in a much larger way.
Pam,
But
do you do this for the
fortunately,
money, or do you do this because it's the right thing?
it's the right thing to do.
I
And
know
like I
that
said,
about you.
it's connected to everything that's wrong in our nation, quite frankly. And it's diminishing the power of the people who really are its government. And so we do need to address it.
Yeah.
We were able to get grade level movement in an average of 6 weeks in 2008. And since that time, we have been in the school systems. We are around the state, during the school day, getting kids reading. The recipe is very simple. You can't homogenize kids and just put them in a proficiency bucket. You have to know. I would have to know exactly how far behind you are in reading. I have to give you an assessment one-on-one. It's like an x-ray if you were to go to the hospital. Some people need x-rays and they need surgery, right? Our kids need that assessment, one-on-one tutoring, and a curriculum that is phonics based.
How often is there pushback from school districts or administrations around the state?
Occasionally, more of the time, we see people very thankful. I've had a principal actually cry because they know that a student needs the one-on-one to help them, and they're so thankful to have somebody who can spend that time doing it.
Well, in this
And
great state of
so,
Michigan, with the expanding educational
mhm,
budget, how come you're or someone like you isn't in every single school across our state? Because it's not just poor schools,
it's everywhere.
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And every kid deserves it. That's where I actually do believe in
Yes.
pure equality.
Mhm.
Every kid deserves absolutely equal access
I
to
know.
literacy.
There are many things that cause this to remain silent. One of them is, I mean, all of us, we are driven to go towards the money, right? The government has pipelines of money flowing without accountability. So this goes back to something you said earlier. This gets perpetuated because all a child has to do in our state and our nation is to show up on count day for the dollars of that child's education to go to that school. If we were to tie literacy to those dollars, you would immediately see a system that would be resetting itself to get every child literate because they would have to do that to get access to those education dollars. So there's lots of little things like that, Kevin, that need to be tightened up. An assessment delivered that's not done by the educators, but by an outside group. And one-on-one tutoring. We have to know the kids that need help.
I came to you when I was running for governor, and I had
Mhm,
this concept
mhm,
because I like baseline statistics and I
mhm,
like measurable
mhm.
progress. And um, I want to describe that to you, and I'd like you to either reaffirm my thought or point out the flaws in a solution. Because my concept for Michigan would be that we assess kids starting in kindergarten, and then we assess them again in third grade. And for those kids that have fallen behind, we refocus on those children and bring them up to third grade. We assess again in sixth grade to make sure that those kids that have lagged behind are
Mhm,
brought up to sixth grade. We assess again in ninth grade to bring them up, to make
mhm,
sure that we are supporting them every step along the way.
mhm.
And then we assess them in 12th grade before we
Before they
graduate
leave.
them,
Mhm,
and we guarantee those children
mhm,
that they will be reading level literate
mhm.
before we give them free college, which would candidly set them up to fail if they can't read. How can you go to college?
Well, they can't access it. If you had all the kids able to access the scholarships that are offered, you would soon have the universities not offering them. They offer them to communities that do not have the literacy levels to actually take advantage of it. It's another one of those little pieces that needs to be tweaked.
So really, it's setting
Mhm.
them up. It looks good on the
It's setting
surface,
them up to
but you set those kids
fail.
up to fail.
Yes, they fall
God, that
harder.
disgusts
I mean,
me.
think about that in inner cities when you have some kids that drop out of school at eighth grade because they know that it's not working in school.
Right.
You have others that parents are getting them to finish. Those kids go off to college, and most of the time, the recidivism, they do not stay there. They end up having to leave because they don't fit in. So you have the child that went the educational route that comes back and looks foolish to the one that just decided to figure out how to make it on their own.
And maybe on the street, yeah, dealing
Yes,
drugs or whatever.
yes,
It's
yes.
funny because I think that government is afraid of literacy in America. And I think that if we have a literate American society, we don't need things like DEI because the kids that are competing for those jobs in those areas
Are capable
are
of
capable
taking them,
in taking
getting
them.
them.
And it's no longer
Yes,
sex or
yes,
race based. Oh
yes. It
my
oppresses
goodness.
people.
Uh, you know,
It oppresses people. Yes,
absolutely.
yes, and that's why we have to address it with all diligence. And
Would
it,
my system that I described to you work?
I think, it's one piece of it. So having
Backfill in.
having an assessment. I think you could start at second or third grade. I don't think you need to start at kindergarten because they basically have zero knowledge. But You could start at third grade, sixth grade, ninth grade, definitely 11th, 12th, because we owe it to these kids to get them at least literate before they leave. But right now, we have an educational model that's really still being rolled out based on how it was created in the early years. You hear many people say, many of the older people say, some of our supporters, Wayne Weber, he only got an eighth grade education. But literacy proficiency is measured at seventh grade, that you could sound out any word correctly, right? You knew how to read. If you know how to read in America, you don't even need a high school diploma. You can make a way for yourself. Our education model is still not established that after you're in third grade that you get a reading class. They're not embedded into the curriculum. And so if a child has missed it all these years, they get passed along unless some other outside source like a Beyond Basics or a parent finds a way for them. And so I believe that one way to triage it that would work is to have partners like Beyond Basics flatten the curve, right? You get all the kids who are 4th through 12th grade reading, and that you really require the educators to start addressing the K-3, but also to continue to test. And if a child moves into your district or something happens, that you're testing them again as they enter your school, or you're testing them at 6th, at 9th, and 12th, and that they are able to get that intensive one-on-one. If we would do that, it would, change everything.
Here's a tough question, because Republicans like to say that the money should go with the kid. They school of choice. They put forth all these theories that will solve our educational dilemma. The left likes to say, give more money to public education. Let the Department of Education do what they do best, which is educating kids, albeit they have never proven that they educate kids. Interesting fact that people need to know: since the establishment of the Department of Education, U.S. educational test scores have declined every single year in America. And we spend more money on education than any other country in the world. Can this, or how important is it to have school choice to achieve literacy? Is it mandatory, or is it unnecessary?
Well, they're not mandated to take every child. There's some problems with the choice system, and I know the conservatives love it, and it sounds like it'll work. I call it the top-downer approach, because in some communities, it works. The best schools getting the best education rise to the top. In the inner city, it doesn't roll out that way. That child can show up on count day to those charter schools, and the flow of money goes to those schools. Those schools are really not addressing literacy. They can actually change. They can actually select which kids get to stay. I've known many kids get in the charters, and then something's not quite right, and they get dismissed from the school. We need to come up with a variety of ways for kids to be served better. I'm all about that. But we also need to maintain a public school, because many children would not make it to school at all if it was just the charter school model. Yeah. They would go by the way of all of our foster care kids who no one talks about right now, isolated and not able to track. They're not on anybody's radar. And the fact that we have a public school in a neighborhood that most parents would get their child to is important. Now, having said that, there's a lot that needs to change in the way we educate our kids. And I would be definitely behind talking about those solutions, because they exist.
Well, I want to point out that there is never a 100% solution in this. Nothing is perfect in America.
Many things need to be tweaked, not just one.
Yeah, there's several things that need to change, but you climb a mountain one step at a time. And it just seems beyond question to me that if we are going to create a societal shift, if we are going to create an educated America, that literacy is the price of admission, And I don't care if it's in private school, I don't care if it's in charter school, I don't care if it's in public school, that has to be the price of admission.
It is. Otherwise, you can't live out your God-given rights.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I happen to personally believe that the money should go with the kid. Myself. That being
it does go with the
said,
child.
well,
But in a very
does,
convoluted way.
In a convoluted way.
It needs to be a system that really supports every child and maintained, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be fixed. And I don't think anything that's been proposed so far is a absolute solution.
No, it's not a solution. And where I was going with that, while I believe that the money should go with the child, in America, my expectation, I was public school educated. And yep, I grew up in what many would call an affluent community. I took advantage of that and ultimately have lived a wonderful life in America. I think that should be available to every kid. And I'm not trying to be idealistic. I want the best public schools in the world to be in America. Because you go to places that are currently out educating Americans like India, it's in their public school systems. Yes, there are private schools. There are exceptions for people that have a lot of money or logistical issues. I get it. I'm talking about the masses of America. I'm talking about the middle class of America, the 80% of people in America. They suffer a disproportionate amount when it comes to illiteracy, don't they?
I mean, you bring up the point of why do charter schools not thrive for everyone in the inner cities, right? Charter schools assume that you're able to discern what's the best school, right? And that you're able to get there. We have many people in poverty that can't get their child to the best school. So you don't have the best seeking to the top because of truly being able to rise there on their merits. You have charter schools getting people who just show up there. It isn't based on it being the best school because the way they're advertised and the fact that they don't have the transportation to get to the best school, it dilutes that image of competition, right? Because in some areas, affluent areas especially, that the best, right? You count on whoever does the best, that's where the people are going to go. That charter schools did not get rolled out with that same level. And how we figure that out is one piece of the solution. Mandating all of the schools to get kids literate is one. I do believe that our nation is moving in the right direction. The conversation since COVID and learning loss has really drawn a lot of attention around literacy. We have 37 states in our nation right now that are embracing what they call the science of reading. Essentially, it is decoding and phonics. It's what we've used for 15 years to get any child reading.
States?
Michigan is one of those states.
I got to tell you, I'm happy to hear that because I think Michigan education is a mess, and that's a positive. So
this is many states. So I think the government is starting to challenge the departments of education, and the states are saying you have to use the science of reading. Some are just saying you have to. Other states are selecting the vendors that the educators must use. And there's a little bit of a battle in some of the states regarding who's going to select the curriculum, right? Because the educators want to keep that right. But we have this conversation that is really brewing right now and laws being created that are moving in the right direction.
How do educators react to those failures that are undeniable across our education system?
I think that the teachers and the principals and superintendents that are over these districts, they see the failure they haven't been part of the decision. There are many teachers that have known that phonics and decoding work, but the highest levels of education from our universities even and departments of education, board of education have embraced things that did not work. And so the teachers divided. Emily Hanford did a podcast on the history of that in education, and so another podcast to look up. But she goes over the history of all of that, and many of our newspapers, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, have done beautiful articles on this issue of whole language and science of reading, and how they see it at war. But yes, there are lots of little things that need to be tweaked. But the main thing is that we have to get every child assessed and one-on-one tutoring to get them up to grade level. May I just tell you a comment? We just entered the juvenile space. So we've partnered with Children's Village here in Oakland County,
Okay.
and we're working with a small group of kids. And they are really caught in a broken situation because, they're not in their homes in some cases. They have educators that come in, they get bounced around. This one boy who we were tutoring said to his tutor, he said, I thought that I just had a life of incarceration ahead of me. And he says, now I know I want to be a tutor. These kids are caught in another broken system.
Mhm.
America is not taking care of its children. And I know that we love to be distracted. We love to, have recreation. We love to do things. But this is a time in our nation which we just need to start with caring for our kids. And I hope that crosses partisan lines,
Yeah.
right? Because they're in K-12 education, they're in juvenile systems, and they have aged out of K-12 and are floundering right now and not able to make it.
Yeah, society is kind of funny because I almost look at professional sports in America today
Mm-hmm.
like the gladiators of Rome.
Mm-hmm.
You had the most successful society in the world, the most powerful society, the most affluent society
Mm-hmm.
in existence, and it got fat, it got lazy,
Mm-hmm.
it lost its edge, and so it focused on amusement, and it
Mhm.
over rewarded and idolized gladiators instead of the core things that had made Rome great. And Rome fell.
Mm-hmm.
And Rome was a republic.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, where I'm going is the United States is a republic. It is not a democracy. It cracks me up. And I'm getting into politics here because the Democrats are always talking about the threat to democracy, like democracy is our form of government.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that's where they want to push government. We are a republic, and a very successful republic. We have existed longer than the Roman Empire, 250 years. And we need to get our focus back.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get our edge
Mm-hmm.
because as we have created this worldwide environment,
Mm-hmm.
this worldwide business community, we keep coming up with excuses
Mm-hmm.
to weaken America. And my hope is that through literacy,
Mm-hmm.
kids will learn the value of our republic,
Mm-hmm.
that kids will learn the value of freedoms in individual success and accomplishment versus be forced into accepting government directing their lives,
Mhm.
government controlling their incomes, government influencing their ideas.
Mhm.
I mean, we literally have, in the last 4 months in Michigan, here's how crazy things are, and I'm going to bring up a Second Amendment issue.
Mhm.
They passed red flag laws
Mhm.
on the Second
Okay.
Amendment.
Can I comment on what you've been talking about? Yeah.
Absolutely, you can,
Before
please.
you go,
Yeah.
because Rome fell, America is falling.
Yes,
We're
that's my point.
distracted by entertainment. can come in a lot of ways. You brought up football. We're also distracted by the deliberate divide in our politics.
Yep.
We're distracted.
I agree.
The people in this nation have the power within them. And what it takes is for them to soften their hearts and to start taking care of our kids. And if we thought all day about how to better the lives of the children in our own communities and in our cities that are around our communities, America would be in a place of prospering again. And it takes the heart of every one of us that are complaining about the system, feel distracted by it, feel caught in the middle of it. Do something meaningful for a family and a child in your own community, and watch how that will grow us back into the nation that we loved.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because roughly 44 years ago, there was an election, and there was a guy that came up with a couple of phrases. And one of the phrases that he said was, the 10 worst words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you.
Yes. Yes.
And another one of his phrases that I totally believe was, if you expect a bureaucrat sitting in a capitol somewhere in this country to be the provider of solutions, you haven't identified that they are the problem. They are not the solution. And that's really, Pam, what you're saying. And that was Ronald Reagan. And interestingly enough, at the time in 1979 that he was running against Jimmy Carter, we had high inflation. We had a divided political spectrum. We had racism being a focus, and society was really a mess. And I think that we are experiencing that same thing in this 24 election. And I got to be honest with you, I don't think Donald Trump is Ronald Reagan. Okay. At least how he communicates. But Donald Trump resonates in a way because I do believe that he is fighting for that America that you were just talking about. He may not say it the right way or act the way I would wish or that I think Reagan would have done. And Reagan wasn't perfect either. But it beats the heck out of the alternatives on the left, which are big believers in big government and big believers in spending money on things that affect society, but that don't correct the ills of society. Fair statement?
I think it's a fair statement. I think that any system that really has its, its constitution on the flow of money only, how it gets it, how it just sends it out without that relational piece for us. That ultimately is a system that fails. And unfortunately, it's devoured generations of people in our nation. And I would love to see the people, I travel across this state in these last 2 years if we've expanded our literacy work and achieved those same results that we do here. And I see good people everywhere. We have a media and we have government. We have things that are trying to divide us. And I say, just forget all of that. Start living instead of from your mind, from your heart, and help the next person you see that you believe needs it. And that will start building something good for all of us.
See, I believe that as well. Living from your heart doesn't make you weak. What made America great over this past 250 years was faith, was family, was community.
Yes.
And you know what else made America great? Hard work.
Hard work, yes.
And all too often we get caught up when we talk about success, focusing solely on economics. And I think, like you, that we need to focus on how we treat our neighbors, how we lend a helping hand to people, how we are a country of compassion. And in the past, we used faith to find our resolve, to find our moral path
Mm-hmm.
to find our resilience because they were like-minded people that could gather together.
Mm-hmm.
And humans like reinforcement. I think that's why that, the internet in cell phones with likes and dislikes. I mean, people look to see, am I getting liked? Because they like that positive reinforcement. A phone doesn't offer what faith, family, or community offers.
Yes.
And it actually divides us even further because it is inanimate. It's not real feedback. As fast as you are liked on a cellular device, you can be disliked.
Yeah.
You
It's
can
temporary.
It's very, very
We have
temporary.
to seek what's eternal.
Yeah.
And that's loving and caring for each other.
And there is nothing wrong with starting there. That is a beautiful way to end this.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you, though,
Yes.
to do something for me.
Yes.
I would like you to come back.
Okay.
And you talk about
Love that.
The little tweaks that it would take. How willing are you to identify those little tweaks, to actually put down a list? Because I want to talk about this. This is a passion for me.
I'd love to do that.
And I would love to continue this conversation. We owe it to our kids. And this shouldn't be about Republicans or Democrats. It shouldn't be about blacks or whites or yellow. It should be about us.
Yes.
And we should care,
Yes.
like you say, enough about the people we bring into this world to deliver for them as a society, as a community, as a family, as here that worship something greater than ourselves. So I really thank you for being
Let's
here
shake
today.
on that.
You know what? I'm counting on it, Pam.
Yes.
It's always great.
Yes. Love it.
Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here
Thank
this
you.
morning.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. You too.
Want to thank you for watching myself and Pam Good discuss the value of literacy and the impact that it can have on our state and our country. And she mentioned something that I think is critical. 3 to 5 years is all it takes if we are willing to make that step for our kids, for your kids, for my kids, for our grandchildren, for our future, to have literacy in Michigan and literacy in America. God bless you guys. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to Beyond the Echo. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop us a comment and share the podcast with your friends. Stay connected and keep the conversation going by following us on social media. Until next time, keep exploring beyond the echo.